Hey, before we begin, let me ask you something. Have you ever felt like something was off? Not loud, not obvious, just wrong. That's what we explore here. At Nightmare at 3 a.m., every story is based on the kind of experience you shouldn't be thinking about late at night. So if you're listening now, make sure you're in a safe place. If this is your first time here, hit subscribe. And if you're already part of our sleepless circle, drop a like. It helps more than you know. And tell me in the comments, where are you listening from? And what time is it right now? Because here, it's already past 3 a.m. My name is Alex. I'm 28, and until 3 months ago, my life felt like a carefully mixed audio track, everything balanced and leveled. I'd been living with Sarah for 5 years in a sunny 2-bedroom in Logan Square. We had a dog, a shared Spotify account, and the kind of comfortable silence that only comes with long-term relationships. I edit podcasts for a living. She's a resident at Rush University Medical Center. Then, as it sometimes happens, the track started to clip. There was no big fight, just a slow, corrosive static that built up over time until the silence was no longer comfortable, just empty. She kept the apartment, of course. It made sense with her residency schedule. I packed my audio equipment, my clothes, half the books, and a profound sense of failure. I needed a place, fast, something affordable, and most importantly, something that was just mine, a space free from the ghosts of our shared routines. I found it in Lincoln Park, in a pre-war brick building with a charming listing, which is real estate code for old. The apartment itself was small, a 1-bedroom with original hardwood floors that groaned underfoot, as if recounting the stories of every tenant who had come before me. For the first few days, the chaos of unpacking was a welcome distraction. Boxes were stacked everywhere, and the smell of fresh paint fought a losing battle against the scent of old wood and something else, a faint, mothball-like odor that seemed baked into the walls. I spent my days organizing, cleaning, trying to manufacture a sense of home. But at night, the silence was different from any I'd known. It wasn't peaceful. It was a vacuum. The absence of Sarah's breathing next to me, of the dog's paws clicking on the floor, of the low hum of the TV she'd always leave on. It was a heavy, suffocating quiet. My work has always been remote, so my routine was my anchor. I'd wake up, make strong coffee, and sit in front of my dual monitors for hours, immersed in waveforms, cutting out ums and ahs, and balancing audio levels. My living room window looked out onto a small, grim courtyard, an echo chamber for the building's other lives, a couple arguing on the floor above, the distant cry of a baby, the muffled sound of a news broadcast from a TV I couldn't place. I felt vulnerable. It was the first time in a long time I was truly, completely on my own. Every creak of the floor, every gurgle of the ancient radiator, every rumble of the L train a few blocks away felt amplified. I told myself it was normal. New apartment, new life. It takes time to learn the language of a new home, to domesticate its strange noises into familiar ones. In that first week, all I wanted was to find some peace, a sanctuary that was mine alone. I had no idea my sanctuary was already occupied by someone who didn't pay rent and who had no intention of introducing themselves. At least, not at first. The first time I noticed something was off. It was on a rainy Tuesday night. I was deep in a tight deadline for a true crime podcast, completely in the zone. I had my noise-canceling headphones on, a lo-fi playlist humming, shutting out the world. Around 10 p.m., I took them off to get a glass of water. The apartment was submerged in that heavy silence, broken only by the low buzz of the fridge and the patter of rain against the window pane. That's when I heard it. A faint, metallic sound from the hallway just outside my door. Jingle, jingle, click, like a set of keys. My heart jumped into my throat. I stood frozen in the middle of the living room, holding my breath. I waited. Nothing more. It had to be the neighbor across the hall, Mr. Hatcher, an elderly man I'd only ever nodded to. Probably just getting home, fumbling with his lock. I took a deep breath, told myself not to be paranoid, and went to the kitchen. This is apartment living, after all. 2 days later, the strangeness got a little more personal. I have a quirk, one of those little obsessive habits you develop over time. Whenever I take off my shoes, I line them up perfectly parallel next to the welcome mat, toes pointing toward the door. It's a small, satisfying ritual. That Thursday, I got home from the grocery store, took off my sneakers, aligned them, and went to put the food away. Later, when I was heading out to take the trash to the chute down the hall, my sneakers were there, but one of them, the left one, was turned inward, askew. I stopped and just stared at it. My mind immediately scrambled for a logical reason. Did I bump it on my way past? I must have. I was carrying heavy bags. I probably kicked it without realizing. Yes, that had to be it. I was tired, stressed about work, about life. My head was elsewhere. I nudged the sneaker back into position with my foot and let it go. But the strange element was persistent, and it started seeping into my daily life. It was always small things, almost trivial. The coffee mug I was sure I'd left in the sink would appear, clean and dry, in the dish rack. The TV remote, which I always left on the left arm of the couch, would be on the coffee table. These were things that made me pause and think, I thought I left that over here. Each time, my internal monologue provided the same rationalization. I must have done it myself and forgotten. Memory is a faulty thing, especially under stress. I wasn't sleeping well. I was still processing the breakup. I was worried about bills. It was the most plausible explanation. It was the only explanation that allowed me to keep functioning. Cognitive dissonance was my shield. I'd see something that didn't add up, but my brain would rush in to say, no, it's not strange. You're just forgetful. You're just distracted. It was easier to believe I was losing my mind a little than to entertain the alternative. The alternative was that I wasn't, in fact, alone in my own apartment, and that was a thought far too terrifying to truly consider. The dam I had built with rationalizations and self-reassurance finally broke on a Saturday morning. The moment of rupture wasn't a terrifying sound or a fleeting shadow, but something far more simple and undeniable. Water. I'd woken up a bit late, around 9 a.m. The sun was streaming through a gap in the curtains, promising a crisp, clear Chicago day. I shuffled into the bathroom, still groggy from sleep, and that's where I saw it. On the dark tile floor, right in the middle of the path between the toilet and the shower, was a footprint. A single, clear, wet footprint of a bare foot. I froze, my brain short-circuiting. The first thing I did was look at my own feet. Dry. I looked at the bath mat. Dry. The shower stall was bone dry. I hadn't used it since the night before. The small bathroom window was latched shut. There were no leaky pipes, no drips from the ceiling. There was just that solitary footprint, damp and shockingly real. It wasn't a large print. It was of an average size, maybe slightly smaller than my own, and it was there, irrefutable proof that someone or something had been standing in that exact spot just moments ago. The chill that shot up my spine had nothing to do with the morning air. It was pure primal terror. Someone had been in my apartment while I was sleeping. My first instinct was to grab my phone and call the one person who would answer without judgment, my older sister Jessica. My voice was a shaky, hushed whisper. "Jess, I think there's someone in my apartment." "What? Alex, what are you talking about? Are you okay?" Her voice was instantly sharp with concern. "I don't know. I woke up and there's a wet footprint on my bathroom floor. I swear to God someone was here." There was a pause. I could almost hear her processing it, trying to find the logical out that I couldn't. "Alex, calm down. Are you sure? Could it have been you? Maybe you got up in the night to get some water and stepped in something." "No, Jess, everything is dry. I haven't been out of bed." "The footprint is right here. It's literally drying as I'm talking to you. Please, just come over." Okay, I'm on my way. Lock your door and stay put," she said, her tone attempting to be soothing, but I knew it was laced with skepticism. It took her 40 minutes to get there from Wicker Park. 40 minutes that I spent locked in my bedroom, a chair wedged under the doorknob, listening to every creak of the building and imagining the worst. When her knock finally came, I practically lunged for the door. "Where is it?" she asked, stepping inside and scanning the apartment with a practiced sisterly once-over. "The bathroom. Come on." I let her in, my heart pounding against my ribs. I pointed to the spot. It was right here. Jessica crouched down, her brow furrowed, and ran her hand over the dark tile. She looked up at me with an expression of profound pity. "Alex, there's nothing here. It's completely dry." I dropped to my knees beside her, disbelieving. The mark, once so clear, was gone. The dry air, the passage of time, it had evaporated. There was no evidence left. Nothing. All that remained was my story. And looking into my sister's eyes, I saw that she didn't believe it. "Alex," she began, in that gentle voice she used when I was a kid and afraid of the dark. "You've been through so much. The breakup with Sarah, the move. You're running on fumes. Don't you think you might have imagined it?" "I didn't imagine it, Jess. It was here. I saw it." My voice cracked with desperation. She sighed. "Okay, but it's not here now. The apartment is empty. Your front door was locked when I got here, right? The windows are latched. Nobody got in." In that moment, I felt utterly powerless. The proof had vanished, and with it, my credibility. To my own sister, I wasn't a victim. I was a man on the edge of a breakdown, made fragile by stress. She stayed with me for the rest of the morning, trying to distract me. But the seed of doubt was no longer about what I had seen. It was about myself. The intruder hadn't just gotten into my apartment. It had isolated me, turning me into a crazy person in the eyes of the one person I had turned to for help. I was alone again, and for the first time, I was truly deeply afraid. Jessica's visit, instead of calming me, made everything worse. Her disbelief left me feeling profoundly alone. Now it wasn't just me against whatever was happening. It was me against the perception that I was losing my mind. I decided I needed hard evidence, something that couldn't evaporate. I rummaged through my moving boxes and found an old webcam I hadn't used in years. The image quality was grainy and the colors were washed out, but it would have to do. I installed a simple motion detection software on my laptop and positioned the camera on a bookshelf in the living room, giving it a wide-angle view of the hallway and the door to my bedroom. Any movement would trigger a recording. The first 2 nights were maddeningly quiet. I barely slept, lying in bed listening to every groan of the building while the laptop in the other room remained silent. In the mornings, I would check the recordings folder and find it empty. A part of me was relieved. The other part, the part that saw the footprint, was frustrated. I started to think that maybe Jessica was right. On the 3rd night, it happened. I woke with a jolt. I don't know what it was, maybe a sound my subconscious caught. I squinted at the digital clock on my nightstand, 3:27 a.m. The apartment was dead silent, but something felt different. The air felt colder, heavier, and then I heard it. A low rhythmic sound coming from the living room. Creak. Pause. Creak. It was the floorboards. Someone was walking slowly and deliberately trying to be quiet. Someone was in my living room. Panic seized me, a cold, paralyzing grip. My entire body went rigid, my lungs seemingly forgetting how to draw air. I lay under the covers, trying to make myself as small and still as possible. As the footsteps continued, they moved from the hallway to the area near my couch, stopped for a moment, and then moved toward the kitchen. I heard the faint click of the refrigerator door opening and then closing. The minutes stretched into an eternity. Every second was an agony of suspense. My only thought was a frantic prayer. Don't come in the bedroom, please. Don't come in the bedroom. Then the footsteps started again, heading back toward the front door. I heard the unmistakable sound of my deadbolt turning, a soft, oiled snick that was almost silent, and a door clicking shut. And then silence. I didn't move for at least an hour. When I finally found the courage, I grabbed my phone and whispered to a 911 operator that my apartment had been broken into. It took 20 minutes for a patrol car to arrive. 2 officers came up, looked around, and checked the lock. No signs of forced entry. Nothing was missing. Nothing was out of place, except for one detail that made my blood run cold. A glass of water, half full, sitting on the kitchen counter. A glass I had not gotten for myself. They were professional, but dismissive. Sir, the lock is secure. Are you sure you didn't leave the door unlocked? They took my statement and left, handing me a pamphlet on residential security and wearing the expressions of men who had more important things to do. The second their footsteps faded down the hall, I scrambled to my laptop. The little recording light was on. My heart hammered. I opened the folder. There was a single video file, time-stamped 3:26 a.m. It was 3 minutes long. My hand shaking, I double-clicked it. The image was terrible, just as I'd expected. Dark, full of digital noise, but the motion detection had worked. The video started with an empty, static shot of the room. 15 seconds in, a flicker of movement in the corner of the frame coming from the hallway. It wasn't a clear human figure. It was more like a distortion in the air, a smudge of shadow that moved with a fluidity that didn't seem right. As this shape moved into the center of the room, the video image began to corrupt. The screen filled with digital artifacts and green and purple lines, as if the camera's sensor was being hit with some kind of magnetic interference. The audio, which had been a low hiss, suddenly picked up a sound, a breath, low and ragged, like a long, weary sigh. The distortion remained in the center of the room for a full minute, the webcam's image tearing and glitching around it. Then it drifted slowly out of frame toward the kitchen. The video continued to record the empty, glitching room for another minute before the motion stopped and the recording ended. I watched it 5 times in a row. It wasn't my imagination. It wasn't stress. It was real. The shape, the breath, the exact time. It all confirmed what I had experienced. The validation, however, brought no relief. On the contrary, the abstract fear now had a form, however shapeless. It had a sound, and it had just taken a stroll through my home, opened my fridge, and had a glass of water as if it owned the place. Any sense of control I thought I had over my life, over my own sanity, was gone. The invasion was no longer a suspicion. It was a recorded fact. After that night, the boundary between day and night dissolved. Fear no longer waited for the sun to set. I spent my days in a state of exhausted hypervigilance, jumping at every groan from the pipes, checking the recordings folder every hour. The intruder, however, went quiet. For nearly a week, there was nothing. No sounds, no new videos, no objects moved. The silence was almost more unnerving than the activity. It felt like the calm before a storm, the coiled tension of a predator waiting. The turning point, the moment that finally fractured my psychological spine, came on a Monday afternoon. I had managed to get some work done, forcing myself to focus on editing a client's podcast to silence the buzzing paranoia in my head. Around 4 p.m., I got up to stretch. The apartment was quiet, filled with the warm amber light of the late afternoon. I went to the kitchen for a drink, and when I walked back into the living room, my heart stopped. My laptop, which I had left open on my work desk, was no longer on the audio editing software. The screen was black, displaying a single, stark white line of text, typed out in a simple sans serif font. It wasn't a threat. It was far, far worse. It read, "I can hear your heart beating from here." I stared at the screen, my mind refusing to process what I was seeing. I had been in the kitchen for no more than 30 seconds. The apartment was silent. How? How was this possible? I backed away from the desk slowly, my eyes darting around the room into the shadowy corners toward the closed bedroom door. The presence was no longer just a nighttime visitor. It was here now with me in the light of day. It was watching me. It was listening to me. My breath hitched. The logical part of my brain, the part that had been so easily silenced, screamed in protest. How could someone type that? The door is locked, the windows are latched. There is no one here, but the message was there, undeniable. Then came the true masterstroke of psychological warfare. I lurched forward and slammed the laptop shut, a useless panic gesture. My hands were trembling violently. I had to get out. I grabbed my keys and my phone, but as my fingers brushed against the laptop's cool metal case, I noticed something. A new file had been saved to my desktop. I hadn't saved anything. My curiosity overrode my fear for a split second. With a shaking hand, I opened the laptop again. The menacing text was gone, replaced by my normal desktop background. But there it was, a new audio file named listen.wav. My blood ran cold. I was an audio editor. This was my language, my craft. This felt personal, targeted. I double-clicked the file. The editing software opened. It was a 2-second audio clip. The waveform was almost flat. indicating silence. I put on my professional-grade headphones, the ones I use to catch the tiniest imperfections in sound. I pressed play. For 1 second, there was nothing but the faintest digital silence. And then, in the second second, a sound. It was a whisper recorded with terrifying clarity, as if someone had spoken directly into a high-fidelity microphone right next to my ear. It was a low, raspy voice, a voice I had never heard before. It whispered one word: Sarah. The name of my ex-girlfriend. That's when I broke. The sheer impossibility of it crashed down on me. Someone hadn't just gotten into my apartment. They had gotten into my computer, created a text file, created an audio file, recorded a voice, and named it after the most painful part of my recent life. This wasn't a random squatter or a ghost. This was an intimate violation on a level I couldn't comprehend. The doubt about my sanity returned with a vengeance, more powerful than ever. Was I doing this to myself? Was this some kind of psychotic break, a way for my grief-stricken mind to manifest its pain? The idea was almost a relief compared to the alternative, because if I wasn't crazy, then something was in my home that defied all logic, all security, all reason. And it knew me. It knew my fears. And it was playing with me. I didn't pack. I fled. The moment I heard Sarah's name whispered in my own headphones, something inside me snapped. I ripped them off my head, grabbed my wallet and keys, and ran out of the apartment without looking back. I didn't lock the door. I didn't care. I pounded down the 3 flights of stairs and burst out onto the street, gasping in the cold Chicago air as if I'd been holding my breath for months. I didn't stop running for 3 blocks. I called Jessica, my voice a torrent of incoherent panic. This time she didn't question me. She heard the raw, unadulterated terror in my voice and just said, "Where are you? I'm coming to get you." I never spent another night in that apartment. Jessica handled everything. She hired movers to pack my things while I stayed at her place, huddled under a blanket on her couch. She dealt with the landlord, broke the lease, and paid the penalty. I refused to go back, even for a minute. The movers told her the place was just as I'd left it. Laptop open on the desk, a glass on the counter. Normal. For a few weeks, living in Jessica's spare room felt like surfacing in a decompression chamber. The constant hum of her life, her boyfriend coming over, the TV on, the sounds of traffic from a different street, was a shield. The hypervigilance slowly faded. I started sleeping through the night. I told myself it was over. I had escaped. The place was the problem, and I was out of the place. I was safe. The final illusion of that safety was shattered about a month later. I was finally feeling stable enough to set up a small workstation in Jessica's guest room. She was helping me unpack the last box of my audio equipment. "Okay, let's test this," she said, plugging my professional headphones into the audio interface. She put them on her head. "What should I listen to?" "Nothing's loaded yet," I said, booting up the computer. "You should just hear silence." She stood there for a moment, a slight frown on her face. "That's weird," she said, pulling one ear off. "What?" My stomach tightened. "I don't know," she said, looking at the headphones as if they were a strange insect. For just a second, I thought I heard someone whisper. I stared at her, my blood turning to ice. "What did you hear?" I managed to ask, my voice barely audible. She laughed it off, a nervous little chuckle. "Nothing. It was probably just feedback or something. It sounded like, I don't know, it's stupid. Tell me, Jess. She looked at me, saw the look on my face, and her smile faded. It sounded like my name. We never spoke of it again, but the truth settled into my bones. A permanent, chilling cold. It wasn't the apartment. It was never the apartment, the wet footprint, the moved objects, the whispers in the dark. They weren't hauntings of a place. They were attachments to a person. To me, I still live with my sister. I work, I see friends, I pretend to be normal. But the feeling of being watched, of being listened to, has never left me. Sometimes, late at night, when the house is quiet, I think I can hear it. A floorboard creaking in the hall. A faint metallic jingle from the street below. I'll never know what it is or what it wants. I only know that you can break a lease, you can change your address, but you can't escape an invasion when you are the territory being occupied. The whisper is always there, in the static between sounds, waiting. And sometimes I think I hear it call my name.